Welcome to AOE Live, episode number 6. We are recording this show live on Tuesday, May 12th. We'll be joined tonight by a great middle school art teacher named Kristin Stevens, who will share her incredible secrets to running an art show with ease. My name is Tim Bogatz, a high school teacher from Omaha, Nebraska.
And I'm Andrew McCormick from Cedar Falls, Iowa, and I teach middle school art. And it's so great to have Tim back with us. Last episode was a little rough without him. We're joined tonight by Kristin Stevens, who is actually originally from Atlanta, and she's now currently in her 11th year of teaching at a charter school in Washington, D.C. called Washington Latin. She spent the first 5 years at Washington Latin building a middle school art program from scratch, and we're going to get into that right at the end of the show. That was kind of a nice new curveball that we didn't know that she did that. And also now she's currently working on building a high school art program. So in addition to teaching the 7th to 12th grade program, she's also a practicing artist who focuses on painting, mixed media, and installation art. So, Kristin, welcome to AOE Live.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm so happy to be here.
All right, thanks. It's really good to have you. I'm really excited for this conversation. So we're going to offer a quick welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. I know Kristin brought her fan club along. I've seen him in the chat room already. We have a ton to discuss with Kristin, but we want to hear questions from everybody who's out there as well.
Definitely. So join in, participate. You can join in the chat AOE Live hashtag on Twitter. And we're also back with our platform Crowdcast. That's helping us host tonight, so you can upvote people's questions. And the more little up arrows we see, the more likely we are to ask Kristin these questions, so you can get some feedback in live time.
All right, and as always, once we're done tonight, the podcast will be available on the AOE Live page, and will be up later this week on iTunes and Stitcher. You can listen to it on your drive to school, at home in the evening, or even during your plan time.
All right, so tonight with Kristin, we are going to cover 3 keys to having a successful student-run art show. I know we all put on art shows. We've got maybe varying degrees of how much we look forward to these or dread them and how much work they can be. So the 3 keys that we've discovered in talking with Kristin are to start planning early, committees being a key to pulling this off, and then delegate, delegate, delegate. So, Kristin, can you just give us maybe a quick overview of why you think it's so important to have kids coordinate and run their own art show, and some of the things that you do to facilitate this?
Okay, well, first I would say that, I could, like some other art teachers do, I could plan it myself. I could put it all together. I could mat all the student artwork. I could hang it up. That's a lot of work, I think, and at the end, then the focus is only on me and not on my students. So that's the main point. I want to put the focus back on the kids, and I want them to learn what basically the ins and outs of running their own art show, how much hard work it is. They have to plan way in advance. They have to learn about time management. I want them to learn how to collaborate with each other, how to cooperate with each other. That we had 73 students in this art show last week, and they learned that they don't get their own way all the time. So there's a lot of give and take. They also learned accountability. They have to be responsible for their committee and their responsibilities. They learn ownership. So when you put it in their hands, you're like, okay, it's only going to happen if you step up and do it. Yeah. And then they take pride in that work, and then they're looking around the room going, oh my gosh, this is what I did. How exciting is this? So it is a lot of hard work. I will say that up front. You are doing a lot of the behind the scenes work. You're structuring everything, but it's so worth it in the end because of the payoff. The kids enjoy it. I got tons of positive feedback from my students last week.
That's awesome. Now, when you're talking about all of this, back work, all that stuff you need to do at the very beginning, okay, obviously you need to start that early, but like how early are we talking? Are you starting things like months in advance of your show?
Okay, so the first thing I do, like I'll do it this summer. Planning for next year, I already go ahead and put it on the calendar. Okay. I like stamp, this is when it's going to be, and I tell everybody about it, and we get it approved, and so it's already on the school calendar. Everyone knows about it. And then I would say at least 2 months in advance, you want to start planning it with your students. Unfortunately, the last art show that we just had, I had to squeeze the planning time into 3.5 weeks, and it was
Wow.
it was killer. That had to do with spring break and the NAEA conference kind of
Yeah.
keeping me in, a certain time frame.
Yeah.
So I would say start talking to the kids about the art show, start planning things at least 1.5 to 2 months in advance, and
Okay.
give yourself plenty of time. You will feel a lot less stressed when the art show
Yeah.
comes around.
Yeah, very true.
Kristin, I've got a quick question for you just to clarify, because I know I'm kind of sitting here and I'm wondering, you're talking about one art show a year, right? You're not doing like a fall show and a spring show. This is kind of a end of the year shebang kind of thing?
Actually, I do 2 shows a year because
Okay.
I have students that come to me, my 8th graders and my 7th graders come to me once a semester. So they have art for a semester, 20 weeks, and then they switch and they go to something else. So I have one in January and one in May.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's totally worth it.
And kids don't really have artwork in both shows, correct? They get kind of one or the other?
Right. So they're invited to the show and they come. I had a lot of students come to the last show that were in the first show because they know about it and they know they want to see what everyone has done. But you're only in one show. So they have one work of art in the show at the end of the semester.
And again, just because I know we're going to get a lot of questions on the website and on Twitter about the logistics of how we pull this off, or how you pull this off, what sort of numbers of kids and students are we looking at per show, the January show and the May show?
Okay. Well, in the past, before we moved to this new campus, I had 95 students do one show. Now I have about 70, 75 students. But I actually had 99 works of art in the show last week because I included my high school students' work in the show.
Cool.
They just didn't help. They just got to have their work presented.
All right, nice. Now, I know you utilize a lot of different committees. Can you talk a little bit about what those committees are and how students get placed on each committee?
Sure. So for 7th grade, we have 4 committees, and for 8th grade, we have 5. The reason we have 5 in 8th grade is because there's a committee called Art Madness, and that is not added until 8th grade. It's something the 7th graders kind of look forward to. It's part of the 8th grade curriculum, and I can talk about that later.
Yeah.
So the 4 committees are the Publicity Committee, the Graphics Committee, the Floor and Plan Committee, and the Refreshments Committee. And I came up with those names on my own. And they're not that exciting, but I make it exciting when I go over it. So the Publicity Committee does the work ahead of time. They set the stage for the show. They do all the posters. They do the invitations. We give one to every single faculty member. They get the word out via morning meetings or assemblies, advisory time, or on our website, which we did. And the graphics committee works a little bit later. They're the ones who write up all the information that goes in the art show. I had students actually type up summaries this time and have their name posted so that everyone knew that they wrote about the Fall Vision project or whatever.
Nice.
I like handwritten things because it connects back to the students. So we had like 8 different handwriting styles. And then the floor plan committee is organizing the space. They plan the space ahead of time. They create a floor plan. I actually have an example of one, and this is, is a little handy-dandy floor plan that you create.
Cool.
We vote on the floor plan, so we had 11 different designs to choose from this time. It was a little overwhelming. And we had 2 that were voted, tied, and then we had to put those 2 together to make one. They mat all the artwork to get ready for the show. They come in the day of the show for 2.5 hours and hang all the work. They're constantly moving things around, and I had one student who said he specifically signed up for this committee so that he could physically move things around. And we did a lot of moving of chairs and tables and partitions to create the space. And then the refreshments committee, I do it a little different every time, but this time we did a bake sale. So they created the yummy goodies for the bake sale. And we made a lot of money. We kind of came out even. it paid for everything that we did leading up to the art show. And they also brought drinks, and they served drinks, and they served food. And this time it was a little different. We had the theme of the art show was murder, mystery, and mixed media. More fun than you can imagine. And it was based off of the game of Clue. So all of the gentlemen in the refreshments committee were butlers, and they had to dress up. They had to wear a white shirt and black pants, and they wore coats. Some wore ties, some wore vests. They totally loved it. I had one kid who wore white gloves, and he thought that was the coolest thing ever. The ladies had to wear a black dress, and I said, if you can find a white apron, wear it. But that was kind of hard to come by, so they were the only ones dressed up. So they looked very nice, and they walked around with little trays, and they served food to the guests.
That's awesome.
It was a big hit. Actually, all the kids loved it. So.
Yeah, I love that. And then a couple questions have come in on Twitter and on our chat about sort of the physical space that you use. Is it different every year? I mean, I know you have your floor plans, but can you talk a little bit about sort of the walls that you're hanging on and how things are arranged a little bit more?
So, you know, this whole art show idea kind of came about because I was in a temporary space, and charter schools are usually in temporary spaces for a while. We're now in a permanent building. So early on, we did it in our sort of a hall, if you will, and we used movable partitions to hang the work on because that's the only thing we had. And I couldn't hang artwork on the walls, so this was my way of showing the parents what we've been doing throughout the semester. We still have those ugly blue partitions, and I actually love them. I don't know what I would do without them. This time we covered them in black plastic. Like I went to Party City and I got you know, tabletop plastic, and we put them over. It looked a lot better. So that's what we use. We also have tabletop easels and easels that we put up that are. But we don't use all that space because we don't need it with 73 kids.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say you don't have an overwhelming amount of work there, so
right. I'd say do whatever works for your school. Ours is in the MPR, which is the multi-purpose room.
Yeah.
So we get in, we get out, and we move on, and then it's used for lunch the next day. You know.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Okay, I was kind of excited about Art Madness that you were talking about. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your 8th graders get to do with Art Madness?
I would love to, because they created this really awesome work of art for the art show this year. Art Madness is part of the 8th grade curriculum. It's sort of a precursor to our final project because it teaches them how to stand up and talk about a work of art. They have to do public speaking in our school. That's really important to us, and so they have to stand up for like 2 minutes and talk about an artist. This was an artist that they picked at random. I always try to pick artists that are kind of weird or have something, you know, something that the kids are going to like.
They need something to talk about, right?
Exactly. You know, like artists that use food, or this year it was all artists that use thread or string or paper, and they use it in a very different way. So they do research on their artists, and then they stand up and they give a 2-minute presentation. They have to convince their classmates that this is the most creative, interesting artist that they've ever seen, because they're going to go in head-to-head in a competition after that. And I put them up on a PowerPoint. The 2 artists go head-to-head, and they have to vote on which one is more creative or successful or good. Yes, they are judging the work, but they also have to justify their decision, and it can't be, well, I just like it. You know, it has to be more than that.
Yeah.
And so we went through 5 rounds this year, and the winning artist is Kara Walker, who, if you know who she is, she's an African-American artist who does a lot of paperwork. She does collages, black paper on white walls, and the student who talked about her kind of lightly talked about how her work is about racism and her views on racism. So the Art Madness Committee, the students that were on it, there were only 8 students. They all wanted to create a work of public art or community art. And they decided, it was actually a lot of fun because I got to participate. They made a packaging tape mold of a student's body, if you've ever done that before. It's a lot of fun. The student didn't think it was so much fun when we got to her face, but she would only let me cut her, cut it out. So I had to participate every time. And so we did that. The students stuffed it with newspaper, and then they spray painted it all different colors. It went up on a black backdrop, and underneath the backdrop on the floor was a lot of black paper and caution tape all around it, and they painted the outline of a dead body. Okay. Now, this played into the theme, which was murder mystery. So the person who was murdered was Miss Pike, who was our one of our grade directors, and she couldn't come to the art show, so she died, and they had to figure out who killed her.
That is such a great motivation for people to attend the show. Like, if you don't show up, we're going to use your absence as a reason to kill you.
It was a funny email that was sent out to all the faculty. I only got a few responses. So she died, and they had to figure out who killed her. And so it was we always do some sort of activity at the art show. This was a little scavenger hunt. They had to find different weapons, and the final weapon was a gun. It was part of the Art Madness work as well, the installation. So it all tied together, and all the kids had to go see it. They also put their cell phones up on the wall, and they played different clips from media broadcasts about all this police brutality that's been on the news lately. We're very close to Baltimore, so this is my students' way of kind of figuring out what's going on, and their reaction to all the media coverage. And it was a huge hit. I was very proud of them. They did a good job.
That is such a great tie-in with current events and what's going on, and really allowing your students, to deal with heavy topics through their artwork. Like, I'm just blown away by how everything in this show that you did really synced well together. That's just amazing. I hope you consider this, Kristin, to be a sign of flattery, but I'm going to steal all these wonderful ideas. I'm like making notes right now, like, oh, I have to up my game. These sound so amazing, and I can totally do this. That's just fantastic. But I want to ask you a question, kind of on a side note here, because I know, for me, when I have an art show, there's one at the end of the year, and I can take stuff that I've made all year long with students, and I'm one of those people. It's all kind of coming through me. I'm kind of the filter.
Right.
I'm encouraged by you to kind of change how I do this. But one of the things I struggle with is stuff that was created towards the end of last year, which could still be technically available because our show's in April, and anything that was made in May could still be in it.
Oh, right.
There's stuff going all the way back to October. Do you have any little apps or strategies that you curate and select that work, or is that not even a concern of you since you're outsourcing that to your students?
I have the students pick their best work from the semester, and I tell them that I want you to pick it. However, I have stepped in a few times to go, you know what, this really isn't your best work. Let's talk about why. And so I had the show in early May. Normally I have it in late May, so that's not an issue. The work from the later goes in. But this year we did it early May, so their final projects weren't, part of the picking. And I don't hold on to their work at the end of the year. I let them take it home. The parents have already been asking me if they can take the work home. So I don't keep it. I let them pick it, and then they have to come up with like a title for the work. They have to write about the materials they use. They have, why is this your best work? And so they have to justify it. I don't have the problem of picking work from earlier on because I don't have access to it anymore.
And that's just, I'm thinking about the headache that I have of like, I have the problem of, do I get the work back, because it was so long ago. But if you really give the kids the agency to select their own work, I bet you really don't have that issue. Do you know if the kids have any sort of apps or digital online portfolios that then they can say, like,
I see what you're
okay,
saying.
here's all the, well, it's what I do as a teacher, but now I wonder if now the kids are being the curator, if you've encouraged them to use any sort of like e-portfolio or something that lets them really look at all their work throughout the semester, or do you do old-fashioned portfolios and paper and they kind of keep everything till the end of the term?
We do. We do the old-fashioned
Okay.
portfolios. I also have a drawer that has all their work in it, so we pull it out, we look at it. They reflect on at the end of each project, so they pull out the reflections, they look at, to see what they learned and maybe what they want to show off. I don't have any apps available right this second, but Artsonia is the only thing that I've done that's online. And if I did anything like the e-portfolio, I'd probably do it more with my high school students than my middle school. It's a lot of work. I have so many students. I don't know. That would take a lot. I mean, you can tell me how that works for you, but you have to take all the images, they have to upload them, edit them, and then put them up, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple different strategies. I mean, one of my kind of filters, because unfortunately my art shows that I participate in are pretty selective, so I get to take a fairly small number of student works. I'm not anywhere close to one per student. It's more like maybe 10% of my students will get an artwork chosen to go to a district-wide show or some other shows. I've done some. My first filter, I should say, is like if I take a photo of it and post it on our Twitter site and say like, look at this cool piece of artwork that's coming along. I kind of just mine my own Twitter feed to see throughout the last 3-4 months like what were we really excited about. But we also use an online or a learning management system called Schoology where all the students have to turn stuff in. And I can easily kind of go through that and see it, but it's a little bit more assignment-y and a little less student portfolio-y, if that's not a word. But they're doing less of the curating, and they're more just kind of turning it in. So it's still kind of coming down to me to look at all of the stuff that has been turned in, and then I'm being the curator. So.
Now, Andrew, real quick though, like for me, I don't have any technology in my room, so like, I don't know if Kristin's the same way, but I literally have to photograph everything or hand over my camera so kids can photograph it. Like, is that the situation in your room, or you have all kinds of devices that you
Well, we
right?
have Chromebooks. We're newly one-to-one with Chromebooks, which I'm sure that a lightning bolt from Google headquarters will come down on me when I say this, but I'm not a real big fan in the art room because I feel like they're really about just kind of getting online and searching and turning something in. There's not a lot of creation you can do with them, but I do like the learning management system. But I allow my kids to have their phones, so they take photos with their phones and then send that to their Google Drive, and then from there to their Schoology. So we're pretty fluid with allowing kids to use cell phones. So.
Okay.
Kristin, you kind of touched upon the kids have these portfolios they go through and they're looking at the work. Do you give the students some assessment, something official that they get to kind of rethink about which works would be the best, or are they just kind of going by gut or instinct? Or do you even give them an assessment of how the show went? Do they self-critique their committee work? I guess I'm just wondering how assessments fit into this whole elaborate student-run art show that you're doing.
Okay. When they're picking their work, we just have a conversation about it. Like I usually have a one-on-one conversation with almost every student about what their best work is, and sometimes they're absent, so I have to step in and do it for them. But assessment, I do a lot of reflection in all of my classes, and so the very next day, my 7th graders did a reflection. I had 6 questions. One of them was about, what was your committee? What were your responsibilities? How did you feel about your responsibilities? How do you think you did? What was the best thing at the art show? And those answers were very varied. What do you think we could improve upon? Again, those questions were very varied. What did you think of the Art Madness installation? And what did you think of the theme? And then, they could just talk to me about anything else they wanted to say. So we do that at the end, and I take everything that they say, sometimes with a grain of salt, because, again, you can't please everyone. And every group that I have is a little different. So the good thing is the 7th graders this time around were super excited about the art show. They just loved it, and they said they can't wait to do it again next year, which is great because you want to get to that point where they start mentoring the next kids that come up, and they are sort of teaching them how it works. Assessment for other things, I do assess them on like 4 different things. 1, participation in their committee, effort in their committee, their overall attitude through the whole process. You know, are they complaining about things, or are they going with the flow? How do they deal with other adults, you know, that they interact with? And their participation at the show, because they have to come for at least 1 hour. Most students stay longer. Some students stay the whole 2 hours. Yeah. And I have a rubric. So I am very organized when it comes to this because I had so many students. I actually created like a graph, a table if you will, and I put in all of their names and when their committee meetings were, what day, what time, and then I assessed them right after they saw me. So I have this all in Microsoft Word, and I have to go through it and, you know, average all their grades together. And I also, just to show you guys, because I did this for the first time this year, I created this little calendar in Microsoft Word. It is color-coded for every single committee when all the committee meetings are, because our students do a lot of sports, and so I had to find times throughout the day to have committee meetings, so they would be during lunch and recess. And like, for example, the floor plan committee has to sign up for 5 of the 10 meetings. You have to keep track of that, and you have to show up. I do, you know, remind them from time to time. And so they keep track of when they need to be there and what they need to do. So they know ahead of time of what I'm looking for. I give them the rubric, and I remind them, you know, you need to be on time. You need to be on task. You're not disrupting other people. All these sorts of things I'm looking for.
No, I know you said earlier that the show goes up and then comes down the next day because it's kind of in a common right. room that other people need to use. Do students just hang around and get their work after the end of the show? Do they come back the next day? Do you have a committee for cleanup? Because I know that's one of the things I struggle with. After a show, I might not even have the kid in class anymore. And then I have these legacy pieces hanging around in my room forever because the kids have abandoned their excellent, wonderful pieces. Do your kids just get it the next day?
Well, we're usually not done with the semester yet. So we, you know, like in January, the end of the semester is the end of January, but we have the art show like 2 weeks before. I suggest not having the art show right the last week of the semester, or you will pull out all of your hair. Right. You know, you will be so stressed out because of all the things you have to do after that. So I used to have the floor plan committee take down the work the next day. I would pull them in during lunch and have them take it down. This year, I employed a lot of my high school students. So that's lucky for me. I have high school students who need community service hours. And there you go. They help me set up the show, and I put them in places where I need someone, and then they help me take it down. And they do it a lot faster. And also, they want to earn that community service hours.
So,
sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And then we hold on to the work, and then we come back to it when we do some sort of reflection at the end of the semester with all of the work together, like you were talking about with portfolios.
You know, I think the gist of this show could be kind of like the good way to run an art show and then the Andrew way to run it, where it's just like, it's so frustrating. So can you know, it sounds like maybe you didn't always used to run shows this way and really get the kids involved. Can you tell me some of the biggest pros and cons, maybe some of the biggest difficulties you ran into when you were first getting this off the ground, and then some of the biggest success stories you've had with it?
Sure. I mean, yeah, definitely the first year was a little weird, you know. Nothing really went according to plan except for the fact that they pulled it off, and it was so exciting. So we were like, well, let's do this again. I would say things that you really need. I involve parents, and that's one of my #1 priorities. I cannot pull it off without them. I can't even put a high schooler into a parent position. I need an adult there for, you know, to help and for eyes. So one of the struggles, maybe when you're first starting off, if you don't have complete parent support, or they don't know about your program, is getting enough parents to help out. So my solution to that is you find one of those parents that's just awesome, who will run the parents for you. And like I told at the NAEA conference that I used Volunteer Spot or Sign Up Genius, And I had a parent use the same thing, but they called all the parents. They made sure they were going to come, and they hounded them. I don't have time to do that. And so find someone who can structure that for you, because the last time I did an art show, not this year, but the last year that we did it, I had a parent do that for me. And when I got to the art show, when we finished setting up, I was like, well, do I need to go talk to these parents, make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing? She's like, nope. I got it. You sit down. I was like, I get to sit down? Oh my gosh. I don't even know what that feels like, to sit down at my own art show. So that was probably the most relaxing art show I've ever been to. So I would definitely make sure you have the parents. Any other issues? From time to time, you're going to have some behavior issues, especially with middle school. And there's consequences, and they know that. And I did have some consequences last semester. Food issues, just making sure the refreshments committee brings the food. I made a mistake one year of letting one student be in charge of forks, and he slept through the entire art show, and we had no forks. So I had to send someone out to get forks. So you got to spread things out. And for this show, the students had to bring 2 bottles of juice. Don't use soda. Yep. Okay. 1, the kids are fighting over it, and 2, they're like hyping and jumping off the walls. Always use juice. They don't want to steal apple juice, so there you go. Yeah. And making sure they bring their baked goods. And if they don't, then there's a consequence. They just lose points for that because they're not doing their end of the bargain.
Mm-hmm, right.
So the good things, I would say, so a couple years ago, the last art show that we had, it was a very close class. It was a very tight-knit community, and you get those every once in a while. And for this one, for an environmental art project that we did earlier in the semester, one group of students created a video, and it was explaining something. I actually can't remember to this day what it is, but it was really funny, and it was very informative. So we played the video at the art show. We had a seating, everyone sat down. We all watched it together, and it was like silent in the room. We all laughed, and it was a bonding moment. It was a lot of fun. And also, the kids really enjoyed the process. They were very collaborative. They all worked together really well. I would say this year we did face painting in the first art show because the theme was connecting with your inner child, and that was a huge hit. I had 2 high school students doing the face painting. They loved it. It got them exposure, and the kids were walking around with like things all over their faces, all different characters, and so that was a lot of fun. Also this semester I put up high school work. So, as Clue, you have different rooms, and we had 5 different rooms, and one of the rooms was the ballroom, and that's where all the high school work was. I got so many positive responses from my students, the 7th graders and the 8th graders, talking about how they loved that the high school work was in the show because it was something that they could look forward to.
Yeah, that's
and awesome. They were, just in awe of what they've done. I also sold some of those works. And so that was kind of exciting for my high school students to have that validation,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I've got a couple really bizarre but yet kind of like practical questions I want to ask you really quick, and then one really big one that we've kind of been flirting with a little bit here. So some weird practical ones. You mentioned volunteer spot and something genius. Those sounded really intriguing. What were those again?
Okay, Volunteer Spot and Sign Up Genius.
Okay.
They are online tools that you can use to get parents to sign up for different activities. You create all the different jobs that you need, what time you need them to be there, what they need to do. You give a description. I did Sign Up Genius in the fall, and I did Volunteer Spot this spring. I wanted to try them both out. Mm-hmm. I liked Volunteer Spot better, but that's just me. You find what you like. And it keeps them accountable. It sends them emails, to remind them, so I don't have to do it. I can get another program to do that for me.
Okay, I just want to say,
very cool.
Free podcast, people. Those tips alone That's like a $20 bit of information right there, because that just changed my whole outlook on humanity. I'm going to get those tonight. I'm going to get people signed up for things. That just made my month right there. I'm going to totally look into those. And Kristin, we've been having a lot of chatter off on the side here. People want to know how they can get in touch with you. Are you on Twitter? Do you have a blog? What are some ways that people can kind of reach out to you if they want maybe some advice on running their own show? There's even been some interest on maybe getting a copy of the rubric and the committees that you kind of use.
Okay. I don't follow Twitter. I don't have time for that. But I have a website, actually, and I had some people email me. They, like, searched for me online. It was kind of funny. So if you look up, it's www.kstevensart.com. That's my personal, my art website, but you can email me that way. Just make sure that if you email me, you include your email as well, so I can get back to you.
Very cool. Right. I know you'll be getting a slew of emails here with people kind of wanting some feedback on how they're running their shows. So,
yeah. And
well, just be patient with me. I have a lot going on right now.
Understandable. But for all of our listeners, we'll link that on the show write-up, which will be on the AOE page in a couple days here. So, Kristin, any last words of advice before we hit the lightning round?
I would say, like earlier, you touched on delegate, delegate, delegate. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to do everything, give the job to somebody else. Either, you're like, for instance, my department head comes to every single one of my shows. She always asks me, what can I do? This year, I put her in charge of the playlist because she's the music teacher. And she came up with all the great, weird, haunting music that I probably could never have found. I always have another teacher says, what can I do? I say, can you go get me ice because I can't leave school? So I have someone run and get me ice for the drinks. Find parents who will do these things. If someone says, can I help? Say yes, and say I'll get back to you, or lean on the people around you, that your supportive community, because if you don't, you're going to work yourself to the bone, and you're going to be I'm already exhausted usually after the end of the show, but I gain it back the next day. If you don't delegate, it's no fun. You're not going to feel the the payoff the next day. You're going to be like, oh, this is too much work. I don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm. Has that ability to delegate always been something that's been natural to you? Because I've realized about myself, I'm not good at that. And it's not because I don't trust other people. It's just because, like, sometimes I can't even think about the time to ask for help. So it's like at some point I have to step back. But have you always been good at delegating, or is it something you kind of worked on or gotten better at?
I would say I've worked on it. I'm very independent anyway, and I like you, I like to do things on my own. And so this is something I've learned over time. Other people commented, you do everything on you never ask for help. So I started asking for help. When you find out that, oh my gosh, it's the night before the show and I have so many things to do, next time I'm going to delegate, Mm-hmm. And the people around me, especially my faculty members, when they find out how well the kids are doing at these art shows, they're like, ooh, this is so cool, and they're very supportive, and they will definitely step up.
Mm-hmm.
So take advantage.
Kristin, I just wanted to say, we found out about you through Nick Hahn, who attended your session at the New Orleans conference, the NAEA conference. And we kind of knew you as this person who has these great practical tips about getting students involved. And just a couple days ago, you sent me an email saying, oh yeah, and by the way, I completely built my middle school program, and now I'm building my high school program from the ground up. That might be like Kristin Stevens, like episode 2 we might have to do. But maybe, I hate to save it to the end, but can you tell us a little bit about that experience and maybe give us a teaser for the next time we have you on?
I'll try. I came to Washington Latin 7 years ago, and at the time they'd only been around for a couple of years. So I came into a school that didn't have an art program, and I was actually really excited because I had so much freedom to kind of just do whatever I want. I mean, how often do our teachers say that?
Yeah.
And so I was building the art program. It's a lot of experimentation. You're taking a lot of risks. You're trying new things. If it doesn't work, you try something else. That's what I'm learning right now with a high school art program. And as the school was growing, so was I. So we were kind of doing it together. You know, we were building the curriculum together, and I finally we've got that all like written out. It's taken a while, and we just got accredited a couple of years ago, so that was a big deal. So now that I've done the middle school program, I'm moving on to the high school program, which is really exciting for me because I never thought I'd be teaching high school, but I love it. I can't imagine not doing it.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll definitely have
to segue that in later.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll transition that into the lightning round then. So 5 questions for you. We do this with all of our guests. Real quick questions, real quick answers. And Andrew, I'll just throw them at you real fast. Number 1, your favorite vacation or travel spot?
I'm going to say my happy place is Cashiers, North Carolina. If you've ever heard of it, it's basically in the middle of nowhere. It's in North Carolina, and it's in the middle of nature, and I love to get away, and that's where I like to, go chill.
Very nice. Very nice.
Biggest surprise you've ever had, either at school or personal, if you want to go there?
Well, I will say that just being asked to be on this podcast was a huge surprise. And probably, I was ecstatic. And, this is actually my first podcast, so my first time Skyping. And so that was a huge surprise for me. So thank you.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, probably the most important one on here. Your favorite cupcakes, cakes, or cookies?
Okay. One of my best friends and colleagues makes cupcakes. She could be a baker if she wasn't a teacher, so that is the only cupcake that I will eat. She made them for my birthday a couple years ago.
Awesome.
And they're great, frozen too.
Kristin, I'm kind of getting the sense that you might be more of a Luddite than I am, and a little more technophobic. But if we are interested, the most embarrassing recent Google search that you're willing to admit to, and if you want to whip out your phone on this one, you can. But do you have an embarrassing Google search you're willing to tell us about?
I do have an embarrassing one. I'm not going to tell you what. I'm just kidding. No, so this is kind of funny and embarrassing at the same time. I didn't know what the end of the story to the 3 Little Pigs was. Do you? And I had to look it up the other day.
I might have to actually Google that really quick because I think I know.
Come on.
I don't know. I'm going to pass on this one.
So things that you don't remember from childhood, I had to look it up. I didn't know that the wolf was boiled to death.
Okay, yeah, that's ringing a bell there. Yeah, yours are probably better than mine. Mine are like all sorts of like teenager things that I don't know, but I'm embarrassed to ask my middle school kids, like, who is this person you're talking about? And then I have to look it up, and I feel really old. So.
Oh, so UrbanDictionary.com.
UrbanDictionary.com. Yeah, I got to hit that up really quick.
that was key for middle and high school teachers. Okay, and then last one: kittens or puppies? You a cat person or a dog person?
Oh, definitely a dog person. Puppies all the way. I'm allergic to cats. That's part of it. So definitely puppies.
All right, very cool. Well, Kristin, I think that's going to wrap it up for us tonight. So we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. I'm really excited that we were able to have you on. So thank you for joining us and for all the advice here.
Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks, Kristin.
Bye.
All right, so Andrew, I want to go back to this one. Other embarrassing Google searches. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh man, I don't. It's going to take me a while to get my phone up and running.
Okay, I'll share mine.
How old are you?
Well, I mean, chronologically, like number-wise, or how old do I feel? It probably depends on the day how old I feel.
Well, you have 2 kids, so I'll take that in consideration.
I've got 3 kids, so.
Oh, okay.
I'm 37, and on any given day, I feel like I fluctuate between about 10 and 70. So, somewhere in between there, depending on the energy level. So, probably something about. I know. I was listening to a podcast, and I did not know who Sam Cedar was. That's not all that embarrassing, though, because I don't know.
I have no idea.
I don't know who that is either.
He's a comedian, politician guy, and he was married to Sarah Silverman. and then I kind of
Okay.
Googled their marriage, and then I got lost in the wormhole of Google. So there you go.
Nice.
You know what you should do? You should watch, since you have 3 kids, you should watch, I think it's Tim Gaffigan. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
He has these
Love
great
that.
vids on parenting.
Oh yeah, that's yeah, totally good
And there
stuff.
was one recently about how to put kids to bed.
Oh yeah, and it's how it's like a hostage situation, or it's
A
like
reverse
crisis mode.
hostage.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Just stay in there.
Nice.
I'll give you whatever you want. Just don't come out.
How about you, Tim? Do you have an embarrassing one?
Oh, I was thinking about this when you brought it up, and I think for me, my daughter just made the talent show at school, and she's putting together a dance, and we were trying to figure out the best music for that. And so I think my Google search right now is just this litany of terrible pop songs as we were trying to figure out what she was going to dance to. So I really don't need anybody to see that list anytime soon.
Oh, right. Well, you better quick get in there and like delete that history then, man.
Cool. So anyway, back to the actual art show that we were talking about, though.
Yes, for sure.
What did you like from Kristin? What were your big takeaways?
Oh man, I mean, again, I can't say this enough or loud enough. Free podcast, like, come on, there were so many good tips in there, and I honestly feel like, no offense to our first 5 guests, I think this is the first time that I'm walking away saying, I have to change how I do things. Like, I need to stop being so teacher-centric when it comes to this stuff. Give the kids agency. I mean, she had so many just great ideas and great connections, and it was all because the focus was really on the kids. And I do a lot of that in my own curriculum with doing like some choice-based ed stuff, but then when it comes to the filter of displaying the work, it's still me. And I really want to get more student-focused thought process, like what Kristin's doing.
Yeah,
I love how this tied in with so much of the new 21st century skills in the NCCAS, National Common Core Art Standards.
Yeah,
the way that kids reflect and respond and write. And I just think it's a slam dunk. So I'm really, again, I'm walking away thinking about how I can up my game next year and get the kids doing more stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think the big takeaway for me is just, and I think inherently we kind of know this, but when you give kids autonomy, they're going to be so much more motivated. And, I think Kristin just does an outstanding job of that, just letting kids go crazy with everything related to the show. And they respond so well to that, and it sounds like it's just, an incredible experience for everybody involved.
Right. I mean, she's talking about working committee work with 7th graders, right? And we have plenty of people that we know that say that, that 7th and 8th grade years can be really tough, and she's relying on these people to put together this thing, and she's given them the agency and the freedom to do it, and they've risen to her expectations. So it's a great lesson for all of us.
Yeah, that's very cool. Okay, so I have a question here for you, though. You talked a little bit. I was thinking about just, the decision when it comes to when you have a limited number of entries for a show, especially, with jury shows, competitive shows, scholastics even. How do I want to phrase this? If you as a teacher know what's more likely to get recognized or to win awards, do you think you should share that info? Like, do you want to share that information with the kids? Like, are you going to influence them too much? Do you want to let them have that decision, or do you want to say, oh, this one has a lot better chance of being recognized or winning? Like, where do you kind of fall on that?
I definitely find that the majority of the shows and things that I do with my kids have a competitive flair to them. So every school can submit 10, and you get in as many as you get in, or even our district-wide art show that we put on, each art teacher only gets 15. So there's no competition as far as a prize there, but it's still like I have a very select number of pieces I can get.
You still want to show your best work.
Yeah, you still want to show the best work. And, one of the things I think about, like with Scholastics or Youth Art Month that all the states put on, oftentimes that have, maybe some prizes or recognitions with it.
Yeah.
It's so hard to tell year to year what's going to do well because they bring in different judges. I know last year my co-teacher and I, we took 80 pieces to Scholastic, and over 40 got either an honorable mention, silver key, or gold key. And we were just like high-fiving each other. We think we're the best teachers in the world. This year, about the same number, and we had 15.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we had that big of a drop-off in work. It was just different judge, tougher, I don't know. So
yeah.
I think you're playing a dangerous game if you get into this is going to do well, this isn't. That being said, I do tell my kids, though, I'm not even going to take that because it is not original enough. You know, if it looks like something you found on Pinterest and you didn't really stretch to make it much more than a duplication of what you did, I'm not even going to consider it. And, you know, most of those kids kind of know where I'm coming from when I say that to them, but I don't try to predict. But, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I always tell my kids, you know, when we're going to the competition thing, like, even if it's your very best work and it's better than everybody else's, that doesn't mean you're going to win. Like, you can't expect to win.
Right.
And so, you know, it's kind of a balancing act. Like, you want to give kids autonomy to pick their best work, but at the same time, you know, it's great for them to win awards because that builds confidence, you know, in that way too. So it's kind of a juggling act for me to decide exactly where we're going with a lot of those works. But anyway, any closing thoughts before we wrap things up here?
I would just say check out the show notes and also the Twitter feed because we've linked a couple things to Kristin's great website.
Yeah.
She's just got so many great ideas. I can't wait to dig more into them and try to implement some of them next year.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, I think the three keys we talked about are you know, really easy for everybody to take away. You know, start your planning really early. You know, utilize those committees and delegate. You know, whether you're doing parents, other teachers, kids, don't be afraid to pass that work out and let your art show run the way it can. So anyway, a big thank you for all of those ideas to Kristin Stevens, and we very much appreciate having her on tonight.
Yep, so make sure you guys check out Twitter, the hashtag AOE Live. We've got some good links and some good discussion there that you can continue the discussion that's going on tonight. We'll be on the chat roll for a little bit with the Crowdcast just to see if there's any last-minute questions or any feedback that you guys have for us.
Yeah, and once we close up shop, podcast will be available on the AOE Live page, and it should be able to be downloaded tomorrow or the day after on iTunes, the podcast app, and Stitcher for Android. Listen to it in your commute, at home in the evening, or even during your plan time. I am Tim Bogatz, and on behalf of Andrew McCormick, thanks for joining us tonight on AOE Live.
Goodbye, everybody. See you later.